I am the founder of a consulting company here in Canada called Geelen, and we help businesses around the world become more customer-centric and more innovative. I'm going to explain to you today why that's so important. But last year when COVID-19 hit, Geelen was devastated. There was all kinds of consulting work lined up for the year, and almost all of it was put on hold. So what I did was I did a pivot and said, okay, if I'm trying to help as many businesses as possible be more customer-centric and more innovative, how can I do that during the pandemic? So that's when I completed the book, The Geelen Formula. It's got all the different strategies and tools and stories and examples about how to make your business as customer-centric and innovative as possible. And that got released last year. So here today, I am very excited to talk to you just about one portion of that book about why this is so important. And as it was mentioned, there is a surprise, a giveaway at the end of this presentation. So please stay tuned. So let's dive in. Customer-centric innovation. So in order to really drive home the point of what this is and why it's so important, I want to first peel it back a little bit, and let's talk about the fact that most new businesses fail. Just let that sink in for a second. Every year in the United States alone, over 600,000 new businesses are started. That's terrific. We have all kinds of passionate entrepreneurs out there. We have all kinds of people building and starting new businesses. And in fact, stats show us that 99% of all the businesses in the US are made up of small businesses. It's the backbone of the economy. However, most new businesses fail. Those same stats that tell us about all these great new businesses that are getting started also tell us that 25% of them don't make it past year one. Right off the bat, 1/4 of every new business doesn't even really get off the ground. That's incredible. But of the ones that do, make it past year one and they have something, 45% can't make it past year 5. Something's wrong. But the ones that do get past year 5, they've got something going, they're able to see some traction, they start to have a customer base. 65 don't make it to year 10, and 75% don't make it to year 15. Most new businesses fail. The goal is not to start a business. The goal is to have a long-term successful business, and 75% of new businesses fail to do that. Why? This is the question that I love to help answer with the clients that I work with. This is the answer that I try and give in the book, The Geelen Formula, and this is what we're here to talk about today. So let's dig this back a little bit more. Why are all these businesses failing? I believe the problem is that the focus is in the wrong spot. In fact, I believe there's one major challenge that every business faces, whether you're a new business, whether you're an existing business, whether you're a startup or an entrepreneur, or you've been around for 10, 15, 20 years. We are all facing the same challenge. And that challenge is indifference. And the sooner we can learn this, and the sooner we can put tactics and strategies in place to fight indifference, the better off we're going to be. So I want to dive into this a little more. Indifference. It shows itself in two very distinct ways. Externally, you could have indifferent customers. And this happens when there's no compelling reason for a customer to choose you, your brand, or your product or your service, rather than your competitors. What is it that resonates between them and you? If the answer is there isn't anything, you have indifferent customers. They might buy your product or service one day, but they're not loyal. There's no retention there. They might buy your competitor's product or service the next day. You have indifferent customers. But indifference can also show up internally when you have indifferent employees. And indifferent employees are people that don't wake up passionate about coming to work each day. Why not? There's no compelling reason for them to. Maybe the company purpose and direction is just not very compelling. Maybe there's no big cause for them to get behind. Or maybe there's a culture within the business that is too rigid or too stale. It's complacency. So you have indifferent customers. The biggest challenge that every business should be fighting is the challenge of indifference. So how do you do that? And I believe the answer is to root your business at the core in being as customer-centric and innovative as possible, or as I like to call it, CCI. Have a foundation of CCI. Your whole model, your business is built around two things: being as customer-centric and innovative as possible. So customer-centric and innovative, those are two of the biggest buzzwords we hear every single day, and it can get lost in the noise. So let's really unpack that a little more. What does a customer-centric company really look like? What does an innovative company really look like? So let's start with customer-centric. For me, a customer-centric company is one that is intentional, maybe even fanatical about knowing who their customers are, right? This is where you have your customer segments, your customer personas. This is important to you when you are a customer-centric company. But they also want to know, what is it that makes our customers tick? What are their habits? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What are their frustrations? And then maybe even most importantly, why do certain customers buy certain products or services? A customer-centric company doesn't just do this on the side. This is what they do. They invest in roles, in responsibilities, in accountabilities, in metrics, in goals, in strategies, in tools, in principles, in practices to know who our customers are, what is it that makes them tick, and why do they buy certain products or services. At the core, this is what you're building your business on when you're a customer-centric company. For anybody that has read the book Competing Against Luck, very popular book by Clayton Christensen, and he talks in here about jobs to be done theory. What are the jobs that people are hiring my product or service to do for them? It's not just enough to know who these people are. Why are they buying our products or service? And as soon as you can really dedicate your business to understanding that, it unlocks a whole new realization. What I like to tell my customers is, people do not buy your product or service. They buy what your product or service can do for them. And a customer-centric company understands this and invests in this. So that's customer-centric. What about the other side of the equation? What about innovative companies? What do they look like? Well, very similarly to customer-centric, innovative companies are intentional about investing in tools, in strategies, in principles and practices to make sure that they are building a culture where people are always looking for new and better ways of doing things. In an innovative company, creative new ideas don't happen by accident. They are intentional. And just to drive this point home for a second, I want to tell you a little story. About 20 years ago in my career, when I was much younger, I had much more hair, but I was also very green in the world of business. My boss called myself and a few of my coworkers into a room one day. The company was doing fairly well, but it was strategic planning time, and each manager was asked to come up with some strategic goals. So he grabs us, puts us in a room out of the blue and says, okay, guys, we need to come up with some new strategic ideas, some new creative things that we need to be doing this year. And he puts up a picture of popcorn on the screen. He says, okay, popcorn moment. Everybody come up with your best ideas. And I froze. I consider myself a fairly smart person. I have some creative ideas every once in a while, but here I was being put on the spot in what was called a brainstorming session, where we were just put in a room and said, give me your best ideas. And I thought, what's wrong with me? I can't think of anything. And I'm looking around the room, and my peers were in the same boat. Everybody's scratching their head. I don't know, on the spot, I cannot come up with a great idea. And the manager was like, what's wrong with you guys? Come on, let's come up with some great ideas. That is not how innovation happens. There are principles, there are best practices, there are strategies, and there are tools to have effective innovation brainstorming sessions. And I'm sure some of you here today can resonate with me, how I was feeling when I was sitting in that room. Maybe you've been sat in a room too, and a boss has said to you, okay, give me your best ideas, and you freeze. And maybe some of you are resonating with the boss in that story. Maybe you have done the same thing to your team and put them in that position and wondered, why is there no great ideas coming out here? So it made me really stop and think, how does this work? How do you innovate? And I started getting really interesting in the neurology behind this, around the psychology around this, and how our brains work. And it turns out it's not easy. It takes intention and a plan and strategies and tools to be innovative. And innovative companies understand that and they invest in it. Okay, so that's customer-centric. That's innovative. What I'm here to talk to you about today is you can't just be either, you can't be or, you can't be neither, you need to be both. And the way I like to explain this to people, and I lay this out in the book as well, is through a graphic I like to call the magic quadrant of CCI. And it looks like this. So imagine you have two different axes. On the horizontal axis, we're measuring how customer-centric is your company. On one end, very low on the customer-centric scale. You're not investing in these strategies and these tools and these roles and responsibilities to understand who your customers are and what makes them tick. On the other end, you're highly customer-centric. You are invested in this. And then on the vertical axis, we are measuring how innovative is your company. At the bottom, very low on the innovation scale. You do not invest in principles and best practices to create a culture of innovation. At the top, highly innovative. What this does, it splits this into 4 quadrants. And I want to just look very quickly at each quadrant so that we can fully understand where you need to be, and it should become apparently clear you need to be in the magic quadrant of CCI. So let's look through each of these one at a time really quick. Top left-hand corner. This is what I call the quadrant of IFSI. These are companies that are extremely innovative. They invest in these tools and these strategies to have people that, and a culture where we think outside the box, we push the boundaries, and we come up with creative ideas. But they're not invested at all in understanding who their customers are and what makes them tick. So the ideas that they end up coming up with are innovation for the sake of innovation. It's not founded in solving a problem for our customers. It's something cool. It's something neat. And in fact, most times it's a fad. So remember those stats about companies that don't make it past year 1, 2, or 5? A lot of times a company might put out something neat or cool, and a year or 2 later, sales have gone. It was just a fad. It was innovation for the sake of innovation, not a recipe for long-term success. And I'm sure you can already think of some examples of different products or companies that have fallen into that trap before. Just think of any fad that you've seen over the last 5, 10 years. Fidget spinners, for example. Does anybody need a fidget spinner? It's cool, it's neat. I buy one because it's the fad, but the year after, I'm not buying another one. I'm not replacing it. This is not a long-term strategy for business success. So let's look at the polar opposite now. Those were companies that were innovative and not customer-centric. Now we're looking at the exact opposite. Businesses that are extremely customer-centric. They invest in knowing who their customers are, what makes them tick. They have roles and responsibilities around knowing their customers, owning their customers, having their customers be successful, and they have a personal relationship with their customers, but they're not innovative. I call this the quadrant of CS, and that stands for customer service. Because what you end up having here are businesses or companies that are great at customer service, but they're terrible at finding new and better ways of serving those customers, whether through new products, new experiences, new innovative models. They do not think outside the box. And in fact, in most of these companies, the phrase you will hear a lot is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Or, but this is the way we always do things around here. They do not have a culture of innovation. Now, this is a very dangerous quadrant to be in because it creates the illusion or the perception of success. Your customers love you. You have a personal relationship with them, and you deliver great customer service. Look at us, pat on the back, we're doing great. Until somebody else comes along and finds a new and better way of serving your customers. Because you're not innovative, you can't pivot, you didn't think of this idea, and the customers start to flock to the new and better way of doing things. Customer service only gets you so far. Again, it's not a recipe for long-term success. You might get to year 5, you might get to year 10, you may even get to year 15 if you're not in a highly competitive market, but you're not going to last long-term. And I'm sure you can think of examples of businesses that have fallen into that trap. In this case, just think of any company that was once a leader, a pillar in their industry, and now they're a footnote. What happened? Think of Blockbuster, think of Sears, Kodak, Polaroid. These are companies that failed to be innovative, and somebody else came along and disrupted their industry and stole their customers because they were only focused on delivering good customer service with the current products and the current services and the current experiences they had. They were not thinking innovatively. It's not a recipe for success. So obviously, if just being innovative is not great, not long-term success, if just being customer-centric is not great for long-term success, obviously being neither is worse. And this is that bottom left-hand quadrant. And I call this flying blind. Because if you're not customer-centric and you're not innovative, what are you? If you're not rooted in understanding who your customers are and then finding new and better ways of serving them, you're in that first 25%. Your company's not even getting off the ground. Who's buying what you're selling? You're just blending in. You're not solving indifference, you're creating it. Flying blind is a terrible place to be, and I hope nobody here ever finds himself in this quadrant, because FB could also stand for flat broke. Nobody's buying what you're selling. And I'm sure you can all see examples maybe from your own past of where you've had ideas for companies and it just wasn't rooted in being customer-centric and innovative. Where you want to be is in this top right-hand quadrant. This is the quadrant of CCI. You are firmly entrenched with principles and practices and tools and strategies and roles and responsibilities with knowing and understanding who your customers are and creating a culture of finding new and better ways of serving them. This is where you need to be. You can't just be one. You can't just be the other. You need to be both. And I'm sure you can think of examples that companies that fall into this quadrant. Think of the companies that have been successful for a long time. They know who their customers are. They always are intentionally finding new and better ways of serving them. Think of Disney, think of McDonald's, think of Apple, think of Tesla. There's all kinds of examples. And if you peel back the onion, you're going to see that what they all have in common is they have built their foundation around being as customer-centric and innovative as possible. Not once, continually. Let's get better at this. Let's continue to move further up in the quadrant of CCI. We are not complacent. We want to get better at being customer-centric, and we want to get better at being innovative every day, every week, every month, every quarter. Being customer-centric and being innovative is everything that we are about. So I implore you, don't be one of the stats. Don't focus on starting a business. Focus on having a long-term successful business. Focus on fighting the challenge of indifference. I'm going to turn it over now for discussion, a couple questions, and then as we said, we're going to do a draw. Somebody is going to win a free audiobook download of the Zero In Formula, so stay with us.